My name is Leonard Jefferson. I am the photographer who took the last picture of Tupac Shakur minutes before he was shot in Las Vegas on September 7th, 1996. Me and my partner, we drove down to Vegas from Los Angeles to attend the Tyson Seldon fight.
Introducing the one and only Iron Mike Tyson.
We got to Vegas about maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, checked into our hotel, relaxed for a little while, and then we walked across the street to the MGM Hotel where the fight was being held. And we were just standing in the lobby, you know, people watching. And actually, I saw Tupac and a group of people that he was with come into the lobby right before the fight. And I just figured I probably would see him later, so I didn't really, you know, go approach him or anything like that.
And had you seen him before or talked to him before?
Yeah, actually I have. I met him at Can-Am Studios, 'cause I used to sell cars. And a couple of people I know that worked for Death Row, I sold them a couple of cars, and I delivered them to Can-Am Studios, and they introduced me to him. I talked to him a couple of times at Can-Am Studios. We just talked about cars, and actually one time we talked about the Hummer that he was interested in getting. I didn't get it for him, he wound up getting it from somewhere else, but we talked cars, and it was just an interesting thing just to, you know, being there with him and just all the melee that was going on. It was real interesting.
The activity at the studio?
Oh yeah. People kept saying they need tickets. And we said, no, we're not selling. And then this one couple came up, they were from Detroit. Never forget them, they had on some bright green, they were dressed alike. And the guy said, man, I'll give you $2,500 each ticket. And we looked at each other and we said, okay. And so we wind up selling our tickets and made a little profit off of them.
It turned out to be a good deal for you. That fight was only like a minute long.
Yes.
People were mad.
Yeah, and that's what we took into consideration too. He's like, Tyson's usually knocking people out like within a minute or two of the first round. So we took that into consideration too. My boy and I, we walked back across the street to our hotel.
This summer, make your own magic at the Monte Carlo Resort and Casino.
It got later into the night. We still were just hanging out, and I got hungry. We were on the dice table, and we both were winning. I was on one end, and he was kind of on the other. So I walked over to him. I said, man, I'm hungry. I want to go get something to eat. And he said, no, I'm winning right now. So, you know, I said, I'm winning too. I'm up right now, so I'm good. I wind up calling California Pizza Kitchen to place a food order. And I called them and told them I was coming to pick it up. Valet brought my Suburban up. And I got in the Suburban and made my way to the Strip, and it was crowded. There was traffic. Saw a lot of police and just a lot of people. You saw people still yelling out Tyson, and the fight had been over for a few hours. I saw this one guy, he was like yelling, Tyson, Tyson. As I was driving, making my way through the traffic, I stopped at a light and I looked to the left and there was some shiny wheels. I'm in the car, so I looked at the wheels and then I looked over and I saw it was Tupac and Suge. And I said, what up, Pac? And then he kind of hesitated, he looked, and then he recognized me. And he said, oh, what up, man? And then I said, hey, what's up, where you guys going? He said, we're going to the club. You should follow us. I said, all right, cool. So for some reason, I have no idea why, I said, man, let me get a picture real quick. I said, let me get a picture. And I had my camera, I had a 35 millimeter camera in my center console. So I grabbed the camera and I just, snapped the picture. Yeah, and I still have the camera that I took the picture with. It's exclusive. I've never showed this camera before. It's a Nikon 125. And see, it has the buttons where you can rewind it here. And here's where the film cartridge goes in right here. Yeah, I held on to the camera. This is it. It's a Nikon 125i. And then after I snapped the picture, the light changed green. They pulled off, and there was some other cars behind them that I recognized. It was like the BMW, and I think it was a Lexus. I just recognized them from being in LA. So I let them pass, and then I got behind them. So I was like 3 cars behind them. I got on the phone, and I was calling California Pizza Kitchen to cancel my food order. As I was on the phone with them, we made a right turn. And after we made the right turn, all I heard was pop, pop, pop. And I'm like looking around, and I didn't really see nothing. I kind of like because I didn't know where the shots were, if they were whatever. It sounded like gunshots, so I was just kind of like looking around. And then all of a sudden, I saw the guys in the cars that were in front of me run up towards the BMW. And so then all of a sudden you see like about 3 or 4 of the guys run up to the car. And then all of a sudden you see Suge make a big wide U-turn in the middle of the street. And now the guys are running back towards their cars. And then one of the guys, I don't know why, he ran and was trying to open my door. My door was locked, so I didn't really know dude or whatever. And I guess he realized he was in the wrong car. And then you see the cars take off, and then you see a Lexus. It was a green Lexus, SC400. I'm in the car, so I know the cars. I don't know, I just got into it, and I wind up making a U-turn and following behind them. And as we got back to the strip, there was traffic coming through, but Suge just ran through it. As he made the turn, he ran up on the curb. And if you see in the pictures, there were 2 flat tires on the passenger side. That was from him going up on that curb on the strip. So then it's 3 of us. We going through the intersection also, flying. And so then we get back to this one intersection, and he makes a left turn, and there's traffic. So he was stopped. And so the Lexus got into a turning lane, and now I'm behind the Lexus. I'm directly behind the Lexus, which, what's the security?
Frank Alexander.
Yeah, Frank Alexander, yes. That's who was driving the Lexus.
Yeah, and it was Kadada Jones's
car. It was her car, yeah. And now I see the bicycle cops rolling up. They're like, and then all of a sudden you see one of them throw the bike down, and he draws his gun. And now he's pointing it at the BMW. I hear out the window, Suge, my man, pocket shot. And you see the police. I couldn't really make out what he was saying. I think he was saying something about get out the car or something. And then all of a sudden you see Suge get out the car, and he lays on the ground. And then the cop runs up to him. Now Suge jumps up, and he runs over. Him and the cop goes over to the other side of the car, to the passenger side where Tupac is. And then while that is happening, another cop pulls up in a car, and he's on the wrong side of the street. He pulls up, and he pulls a gun on me. He said, freeze, don't move, put your hands on the steering wheel. And then all of a sudden the door opens, and he's snatching me out the car, throws me on the ground. I say, hey, what's going on? What's up? And so while he puts me on the ground, while I'm on the ground, he has me facing where all the action is. So I'm laying down, looking like this, and I see they open the door. They take Tupac out. He's on the ground. I see him, like they put him on the ground. And then now the ambulance shows up. But as the cops are, searching me, and, and I'm telling them I'm not with them or whatever, I'm not with them. And then he was saying, well, we got witnesses saying that you're part of their entourage. I was like, no, I'm just here. I just pulled up to the intersection. I just saw him. I just took a picture. And then he said, well, we have witnesses. He kept saying, we have witnesses saying that you were part of their entourage. Now the ambulance pulls up, and I see the medics are, tending to Tupac and Suge, and I saw that Suge had some blood coming down his head or whatever, and they were tending to that, and then I see him put Tupac on a gurney, and they put him into the back of the ambulance, and then Suge, he gets in, and then they drove off, and then the cops interviewed me, and I gave them my driver's license, told them what I was doing, where I was staying at, and now the other cops are talking to the other guys that were there, because then now they pulled up the guys from the Outlaws. I learned that they were from the Outlaws. They talking to Mr. Alexander. They wouldn't let him go. He kept trying to leave. He said, I'm his security. I need to be with him. He said, no, you can't leave the scene, whatever. And so they searched my car. It was new. I had just bought the Suburban maybe like 2 weeks before. So I didn't really have anything in it, just maybe some papers or whatever. And then the officer said, you're free to go. We don't need you. We got your information. If we need you, we'll contact you. So the cop lets me go. So I immediately get on the phone and call my friend that works for Death Row, and I called and told her, hey, Suge and Tupac just got shot. We're at the fight and they just got shot. And then she said, okay, and then hung up. And then I drove back to the hotel. And
what did your friend do for Death Row? Do you remember?
She was just a secretary. She was a secretary. Yeah, so I drove back to the hotel and valeted my truck. And I went back to the dice table where my boy was, and I'm telling him what happened. I'm just like, I'm still kind of like adrenaline just pumping, because I had a shotgun pulled on me. I'm laying on the ground. I just was involved with Tupac being shot and Suge going through their situation. So I'm telling him, yo, man, it was Tupac got shot. Yeah, so I had been at the hotel, I'm not, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And as I'm standing there talking to my boy, I get a tap on my shoulder, and I look around. It's the same officer that drew down on me and pulled me out the car. He said, Mr. Jefferson, we fucked up. The detectives at the scene. We shouldn't have let you go. They want you back at the scene. I was like, man, how'd y'all find me? The guy said, man, we're the police. I was like, I had already told him that I was staying at the Monte Carlo Hotel anyway. So it was just like all those people, like out of all those people, how did they find me? Seriously, he tapped me on my shoulder and said, we're the police. I was like, so anyway, I got through that. And then he said, well, we need to get you back at the scene. And I asked my boy, did he want to go with me? He said, no, I'm cool, I'm gonna stay here. So the officer told me that we see your Suburban still out front, and we need that back at the scene also. I said, okay, well, I'll drive. He said, no, well, I'll have my partner drive it. You'll just ride in the car with me. And so we walked back out. I gave him the valet ticket. The valet gave us the keys. The officer got into my Suburban, and I got into the front seat of the police car, and they drove me back around. We were really like about 2 blocks away. It was like a 2 or 3 minute drive. It wasn't that far. So we get back to the scene, and now it's the media's there. It's a bunch of people, now standing around. They got it taped off with the yellow tape, especially because of who was involved with it. So it attracted a lot of attention. I sat in the car at least about 30 to 45 minutes before someone came to talk to me. So finally, a detective came up. I can't remember the guy's name. I think the guy's name was Manning. So he came and talked to me. I got out the car, and he had the card with my information on it. And he said, yeah, I see you from Los Angeles. You're staying at the Monte Carlo Hotel. He said, tell me about what'd you see and what happened? So I just told him that, yeah, I was at the intersection. I was just cruising, I was just checking out the scene. I really wasn't being truthful to him because there was a lot of stuff that I left out of the story I told him.
What did you leave out?
Just left out about me following them and being in the the little chase scene or whatever it was. I just told him like, no, I just happened to take a picture of him and, I was driving around.
You didn't want to think you were trying to get rid of I'm not part of their entourage.
Yes, I was just trying to get it, because I didn't really know what was going on.
Right.
I didn't know who was involved or what was going on, so I was just trying to, stay out the scene. I told him I just saw him, I had took a picture. He said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah, I was just at this intersection and, they rolled up next to me and I took a picture of them." He said, "Did you take many pictures?" I said, "No, I just took one picture." And then he said, "Okay, that might be helpful to us." So he said, "Do you mind if I see the camera?" So the camera was still inside of my truck. So I walked over to my Suburban and I got the camera. And he said that, do you think we could have the film? And I kind of like hesitated. I was like, "Have the film for what?" He's like, "I could get it developed and tell you what's on it." He's like, "No, we prefer to do it ourselves." So I said, "Okay, sure." I took the cartridge out and, gave it to him, and he wrote some information down and gave it to me, gave me his card. Yeah, that was pretty much it. And then he said that he would get back with me. And so there were other people that they were interviewing on the kind of like on the medium. Actually, where they threw me down, everybody was sitting down. So I sat on the curb. I was there with some of the outlaw guys. I don't remember their names, but I just knew they were the outlaws. And so I sat down and we sat there till about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't a cold night, it was summer, so it wasn't like, it was the winter time, so it wasn't that bad.
You sat there for all night, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And so he came back and, asked me some more questions, just, where were you at when you took the picture? So I showed him, because we were still at the intersection. And people don't know this, and I mean, I've said it before, but the same intersection where I took the picture is the same intersection where we ended up at. So I had took the picture on one side, kind of like in front where the car ended up at, where the BMW ended. I took the picture like right here, this light here. So, I just told him where we were. Eventually, he said I was free to go. He gave me the keys to my Suburban, and I drove back to the hotel and went to my boy's room, knocked on the door. He was there. I said, "Man, I'm back." And he said, "Oh." He's like, "You've been gone a long time." It was, So then I said, "Man, I'm gonna lay down for a little while and then I'm ready to get on the road. I want to get out of here." And we got back on the road back to LA.
So what do you think about the fact that the Southside Crips were in your same hotel with you?
Y'all staying at the Monte Carlo?
Yeah.
Okay. And who got the rooms for you at the Monte Carlo?
My wife, it was in my wife's name.
You didn't know that then, obviously. You didn't know who.
Yeah, I didn't know that. This is my first of hearing of this.
But it's crazy that, that cop comes into the casino area, finds you, and not realizing, because they also went back to that hotel after the shooting. They ditched the car and then walked back. So they were I went
and parked the car by the carriage house. It's a parking lot on the opposite side of the carriage house. We left the car there and put the gun on the tire and left.
On the tire, front wheel tire, back tire, what?
Front tire.
After y'all left the gun on the tire, where'd you guys go?
We smoked weed and drank.
Yeah. Where? At the hotel?
At the hotel.
Stay in the room?
They might have been back by the time they got there, and here's this cop in the casino, and upstairs are the alleged killers. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. That's become one of the most famous photos ever taken in history. And were you when the police took it from you, were you like, "Oh man," did you think, were you already thinking, I better get that back? Or
I wasn't even thinking anything like that. I didn't even think anything of that. Get back, Detective Manning told me that, we were talking a couple days, and, we'll talk about getting my film back, because I had some other stuff on it, just like some stuff of my kids and just other little stuff. So, Friday comes around. I call him Friday morning. It's like in the morning time, and he said, yes, we got around to developing the film. We don't see anything on it. The only thing that we saw was, just with Tupac and Suge sitting in the car. And he said, yeah, we'll get the film back to you. He said he's gonna FedEx it to me, overnight it to me. And then, like I said, this was in the morning. And then later on that day, I remember where I was. I was on the 405 freeway, driving toward the valley, maybe about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And one of the popular stations I listened to was 92.3 The Beat. And at the time, a popular DJ was on. The name was Theo.
He's a good brother, man. I mean, people can say whatever they want about Pac, but, man. I mean, it's just, you can feel it in his presence, man. He's got a good heart, man. And it's just anybody with a good heart, man. When I see him go down like this, man, it just hurts, man. It's just, man. Man, what do you think?
I can't think, homie.
And he came on and came on the air and said that Tupac had just died. And I was like, wow. And I was kind of like taken aback, and it was like some traffic on the freeway. And I remember I was approaching Santa Monica Boulevard on northbound on the 405, and I just like, wow. And I just had a flashback of that night, of everything that transpired. And then all of a sudden, he died. And, I didn't really think, because he had been shot before, so you just think like, oh, well, he's, he a trooper, but over the course of the week, they were saying he was, he was unconscious, and, so I just thought that was a process, and eventually he was gonna make it through. And unfortunately he didn't. It took me aback. It took me back because, like I said, I was there. I saw not the shooting, but I heard it, and then just to be a part of the whole little chasing, I guess you would call it, or to get away or whatever, and then to be, pulled out my car, and I was still in my Suburban. I was driving my Suburban, and just the fact of being there, and it really kind of hit me, because it was, like I said, I was there. I was a part of it, and just didn't think that dude was gonna die.
How did the photo get out for the first time? How did it end up getting published?
Monday came, and I called him. I called him just to follow up. He said he's gonna FedEx, so I was asking you a tracking number, things like that. And he said, oh yeah, we're gonna be sending it out today. You'll get it tomorrow, and we're gonna call you back with a tracking number. And then one thing he said to me, which stuck with me even till today, he said, don't worry, I'm not gonna mess with your money. I didn't know what he meant by that. Like, I'm not gonna mess with your money. I didn't think anything of it. And so they never did call with the tracking number, but it came on Tuesday. Overnight, it came on a Tuesday. And so I got it, and I took it to one of those 1 hour photos in Beverly Hills, which is on Beverly Drive. And I took it there, and the guy said, it was gonna be an hour to develop. I said, okay. And so I went back outside. I sat in my Suburban and sat outside, was on the phone talking to a couple of people. And then all of a sudden, I started getting these phone calls from numbers that I didn't recognize, and I answered it, and a person got on the phone and said, "Hi, I'm such and such." I don't remember what outlet or whatever he's from. He said, "I'm from such. I heard you you have a picture of the crime scene." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" I was like, and he said, "Yeah, we like to see the picture. Maybe get you to come in and interview." I was like, "I'm not interested." So then another call comes in. Now it's a lady saying, same thing. I was like, wow. And I was like, "How'd you get my number?" And they never would say, "Well, we're with the press." I was like, okay. It was really strange that they were calling me. And so now an hour went by, so I went back in to get the picture, and the guy, he said, "Oh, Tupac." The guy that developed it, he said, "Oh, it's Tupac." I said, "Yeah." And so then I paid for it, and then I got another call, and I just hung up the phone. I just stopped taking calls if I didn't recognize the number. I just didn't take the call. So I called an attorney that I used to deal with. He's a criminal attorney. Unfortunately, I had some dealings with some criminal stuff in the past. So I contacted him, and I told him what was going on, and he said, "Oh, that's interesting." And then he said, "All right, I'm going to call you back." So a couple hours went by. He called me and said, "Oh, I got an entertainment attorney that you could talk to. I've already talked to him. He's waiting for your call." So I said, "Okay." So I contacted him, and he said, "My office is on Sunset. If you want to, you could come in and talk to me." And I said, "Okay." And his office was literally right next door to the Comedy Store. So I showed him the picture, and he said, "Wow, it's an interesting picture." And he said, "How long did you take this picture?" I said, "It was like maybe a minute or two before he got shot." And he said, "Wow." And so he said, I have a close friend that I work with, and I'm going to give him a call." He called. It was Keith Clinksdale, Keith was the Vibe publisher, Vibe magazine, which Quincy Jones owned. So he called him, and he happened to be in town, so he came up to the office. I was in the office for quite a while. Keith came up to the office, talked to him, told him the story, and I showed him the picture as well. And he said, "Hold on a sec, I gotta make a phone call." So he went into the other office, took the picture, went into the other office, and made a phone call. And he came back in. He said, "Yeah, that's the real deal." And he said he called Kidada. Kidada's the one that he called, and she's the one that verified what he had on, because he was off the picture. He had like the tank top, whatever, and she confirmed what he had on, because he just wanted to verify if that's what he had on, or if this was authentic.
Make sure it wasn't an older photo from some other night or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So while we were waiting for Keith to come, there were other people calling me. There were other agencies calling me, and I said, "Well, here, I'll have an attorney now. You could talk to him." Inquiry was down the street, was about maybe a mile or so away. So they brought like about 5 or 6 people in, looking at it like, oh, they were, oohing and ahhing over it. After that, we drove back to the office, and Keith showed up, and that's how that whole thing went. We let Vibe magazine publish the picture first, and after that, there was another agency, Corbis. Corbis actually was Outline, and then it was Outline Press, and they're the ones that handled the distributing of the picture.
Corbis is how you and I met, Because Corbis isn't around anymore. They got bought up, I think, by
Bill
Getty.
Gates. Yeah.
Yeah. So Corbis was one of the photo agencies like Getty Images, or people like me, documentary filmmakers or magazines or whoever can go and license photos.
Yes, sir.
Celebrities and whatever. A bunch of, I mean, they have millions and millions of photos.
Yeah.
So Corbis, and so you reached out to me because you would get your quarterly report and you would see who had licensed it, and you saw the name of this movie, Murder Rap, and you're like, oh, what's that about? And that's how we got in touch with each other. But
there was one thing that I really didn't do. I didn't do any live media. Like, we were getting calls, and I'm not exaggerating, we were getting calls from all the different, like back then was Entertainment Tonight, companies that were calling, offering to pay me for my interviews and to use the picture.
How much were they offering?
I'm not exaggerating. I turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars. No exaggeration.
Why?
Because it was still fresh, and I didn't know. And my attorney we just didn't want to put me out there, not knowing what was going on. I wasn't, I was kind of like thinking about my life because I didn't know, what would come from behind it. So I didn't do any interviews, any live.
You were worried about the killers still being out there? Or?
Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't want people to, see me and think that I was a part of it or anything like that. So we just licensed the photo and let the photo, do what it did. And it's, as of today, it's taking a life of its own. And, like I said, it's taking a life of its own. As you stated, it's one of the top photos I've seen over the years. If it's been used as like last moment shots and.
Yeah, you see an article, most famous last photos taken of people. It's always in there.
It's always, it's always somewhere.
Can you say how much Vibe offered for the exclusive?
Vibe, I don't remember. I don't remember the dollar amount. I don't remember the dollar amount. It wasn't. We just gave them the exclusive. It wasn't about the money. We just gave them the exclusive, just based on the relationship, and just that was one of our culture magazines back then. So we wanted it to, stay within the culture back then. You have these conspiracy theorist people. Photos fake, it's Photoshop, and he set up his death. The picture's a part of, it was a fake, and
he's still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive, and funny. I currently work in the movie industry now, and that goes back to the theory. Also, I work in the movie industry. I'm a transportation picture car coordinator, which means I provide the vehicles that you see on TV. So people have Googled me and looked up and saw that I work with cars. So they were, their theory was, it was a movie car. It was a fake shooting. It was a setup. It was a movie set.
Because for your job, for people who don't know, you're a picture car captain. So cars that appear on screen in movies, that is your job to procure those cars, to be on set, make sure they're operating properly.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize a lot of times you have to have two of the same car just in case one goes down.
Oh, exactly.
You don't stop the shoot and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so people thought, you work in Hollywood. It's all a Hollywood production, right?
Yeah, and at the time, I wasn't even, I didn't really start. I went to school for film. I attended UCLA film school, and at that time in '96, I wasn't even in the industry. I didn't really start working in the industry doing picture cars until like '98, '99. That's when I really got into it. So for them to say that, I was, the car was a movie car, things like that.
One of the things I used to get a lot when I first put the movie out, and I finally had to do like a photographic analysis, was people like, there's no key in the ignition. There's no key in the, that's one of the big things. Like I had to I had to research what the key looked like for the BMW 7 Series, and then I did a zoomed in, of the high res photo that the copy you gave me, and was able to show the key is in the ignition. There's just not a big keychain attached. He had just leased it. I think they just received the car. There was no chain on the key. It was just the key.
That was another thing. People were saying there was no key, and then you have people come back, well, it was a push button start. No, it wasn't a push button start. It just had the single key in the ignition that you turn. people were looking for something hanging down from the key or, something like that. But that's not, it was just a single black key in the ignition. And, you debunked it by showing that how the ignition looks with the key in it and without the key in it. So I remember that a few years ago you did that, and I kind of referenced that to people.
So Frank Alexander, Tupac's bodyguard, what happened with him later on?
Really, it just goes back to people really never knew who I was. They just knew of the photograph. And I can't remember the year. It was a director that I worked with didn't even know that I took the picture, Reggie Blythewood. They were doing an ESPN story. This is when 30 for 30 had just started.
Yeah.
I was part of one of the first.
That was like One Night in Vegas or whatever it was called? Yeah, it was really good, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I had worked with Reggie on other, I think 1 or 2 shows before, and I didn't really talk about, me taking that picture. It wasn't nothing I talked about. So coincidentally, he was doing, I got a call from someone from ESPN saying that they were doing this new show called 30 for 30, and they wanted to use my picture and they wanted to interview me. And I told them I had never done interviews. I wasn't really interested in doing any interviews. And a few weeks went by, they called me back and said, "Oh, we really like to use you." And I said, "Okay." So I gave in to them. And that's how people learned who I was.
Who was behind the camera?
Who actually took the picture. But going back to your with Mr. Alexander, I later heard, I can't remember the year that I heard it, but he was saying that I was lying and I wasn't there, and I don't know where that came from.
Or why would he even care? What does that have to do with anything, right?
Yeah, I don't. And so once I heard that, but then I started researching, and he had passed away. So I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Had I got a chance to talk to him, I would have refreshed his memory that, hey, I was there with you. We talked. So, maybe, you just didn't remember who I was, or we didn't exchange names or whatever.
He fell in with some conspiracy nuts there towards the end of his life, unfortunately.
Okay.
And I think, I don't know, I think he lived with a lot of guilt, as you would if you were Tupac's bodyguard and he gets killed right in front of you. I don't think the murder was his fault or preventable by him, but I think he lived with the guilt from that for a long time. Yeah. And he did end up shooting himself in his own home with his own gun, right in front of his wife.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, his wife did a podcast that I found about grief. She went on a podcast about grief, and someone dies close to you, how to get around that. And I listened to that and listened to her tell that story.
Wow.
But then the conspiracy nuts will claim that he was killed, and then it's like, okay, well, you were implying his wife is now in on it. These conspiracies, in order to keep them going, they have to keep expanding. Every time someone new comes forward with information that contradicts it, it's like, oh, well, that person's in on it too then. It's like you're adding another player into the theory. It's all so ridiculous.
Back to him saying that I was lying. I didn't. Had I heard this, I heard it maybe a few years after someone sent it to me on Instagram or something, but like I said, I didn't know he had passed away, because I definitely would have refreshed his memory of who I was. Right.
It's hard to keep up with those conspiracy theories because they're always morphing too. They're always changing, shifting around. And so maybe at the time someone was trying to push the photo was fake theory. And he was to discredit you. He's like, oh, you weren't even there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you another story as well. So back then in '96, and I know this because as a kid, my great grandmother used to take me to Vegas. Like, we used to go every Labor Day, right before school started. We used to go to Labor, and they had helicopter tours right on the Strip. They had a helicopter tour right on the Strip. So, going back to your theory thing, so there were helicopters landing and taking off while the police were investigating the whole thing. And someone even said that he took off in a helicopter because the helicopter landed.
We ran up the street as cops were running past us, and by the time we got here, they were already taking, which now I found out was Tupac, into the helicopter away. He had been shot.
Yeah, they interviewed this blonde girl. It's kind of famous interview. She ended up going on 10 years later being one of the hosts of Extreme Home Makeover.
I need to deliver a surprise to Katrina and her family that we are going to see music superstar Justin Bieber.
Oh, okay.
Which is crazy that it's the same girl, but yeah, she just obviously misspoke and was mistaken. Everybody else is like, no, we watched him get in an ambulance.
Yes, I saw him get in the ambulance.
Yeah. And the funniest thing about that's all based on that one girl's interview, and it's like, you think that on the strip on fight night, full of people, that a helicopter flew him away and only one person saw it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Really? Common sense. There was one other thing with the photo that people have claimed. There's a version of the photo that doesn't have the red rag in it.
There was a red rag, a red towel that was originally in the car. Someone wanted to use the picture or something to print it, and the graphic person took the red towel out, trying to, just to, I guess, beautify it or take away from it.
Or maybe saw it as a potential gang reference because the red bloods, maybe thought that was something to take. He wanted to sanitize the photo. I don't know.
Think it had removing it had anything to do with the gang ties or anything. I think it just took away from the picture. Took away from the focal point of the picture. And after I discovered that, I was like, because I really didn't pay attention to it. And later on, you'll see there's pictures out there that you see the towel on the seat or on the floor. Afterwards, after the car was sent to the impound or the police were doing the investigation, you see the red towel in the car. And it's just a part of you go to these theories, these conspiracy people, they had my page shut down. I can't even own my page anymore.
Your Facebook or your really?
Instagram, yeah.
You set a page up for the photo.
Yeah.
You called 1 minute before?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's been shut down for about 2 years now.
Jeez.
Because someone came on there, and they don't give you a reason why. They'll say it was promoting something false.
Right.
And I would never promote anything, nothing that was,
right. Nothing
like that. So it's the 30th anniversary coming up this year.
Yeah.
Over the years, people have, made different things for me. Actually, I have, let me see here. I got this hand-painted shirt that an artist in Chicago made for me. This is all hand-painted. Someone sent to me.
And that's a painting.
Yeah, this is a painting on a canvas that someone sent to me. A couple of magazines that you've seen. This is from Esquire magazine. This is December 1996.
So just a few months after the murder.
Yeah. Did a little article on it.
There it is.
I remember I got interviewed for this at the hotel. Gosh, I can't remember the name of the hotel. And this is something from Rolling Stone. This is like last year, I think it is.
Yeah, that Rolling Stone, I'm quoted in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the writer interview.
Oh, this is 2024. This is Rolling Stones with Dua Lipa.
Yeah.
From 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been in all the publications, New York Times, BBC have done different shows with it, different productions. But it's like I said, it's taken a life of its own.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it had to happen to such a, profound person. He was, even to this day, some of the stuff that he talked about is still relevant from back in, he was 25 years old when he died. And some of the stuff that he talked about, rapped about, or even just his beliefs are still relevant to today.
Right.
He was, sometimes it hits me, and my kids, they look back at it and like, Dad, what were you doing? Like, how did you do this? And you know, it's just my kids, they because I've been involved in so many different things. Just my life has just been involved in different things, and I'm in the picture with Michael Jordan doing the same as Slam Dunk.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You're in the crowd?
Yeah, I'm in the crowd. Yeah. So, you know, it's just different things, you know, that people find interesting. Yeah, I mentioned that I've recreated the BMW for different scenes, and also came to hear that the person that owns the BMW now has tried to sell it for like $1 million. In my opinion, it's not going to be worth $1 million because
they repaired it.
You repaired it. If you left the bullet holes in there, the bent wheels, then you probably would be, you know, get some serious money. But because you restored it and it's like a new car, that's any car that's on the street.
It's just another 77 series from the...
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, I always say it's like the Bonnie and Clyde car that's on display because it's all, you know, Swiss cheese from the 100 bullets they shot at it.
Yeah.
If you repaired that, nobody would care. Seeing it look like that.
Yeah, you want to see the bullet holes. You want to see the bent rim.
I think it's so it's for sale at this dealership in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
I think every few months they get another round of stories about it. The media just loves to write about it.
Yeah.
And they've sold, I think it was $1 million, then they wanted like $1.5 million, now they want like $1.7 million.
Oh, wow.
I think the whole reason they have that car is not really to sell it, because they have it on display like nicely, like prominently in the store. I think it's really just to get people to come in to their dealership.
Yeah.
And look, and
look at the car.
It's like a museum piece, and then while you're here,
you can look at this Maserati we have over here.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think it's worth $1 million. You got to have the bullet holes or something in it.
And then with Biggie's Suburban, I did an episode of my deep dive series about this. Police again processed the Suburban. It was a rental from Budget Rental Car.
Yeah.
And they returned it, and then they found out through the grapevine that some auto body shop in North Hollywood had it and was taking the door off, and that they were going to sell the door. And these detectives were like, no, we're not going to let his family see that stuff.
Yeah.
And they went and they took the door into evidence.
Wow.
And I think to this day it is stored in a warehouse for the LAPD.
Oh, wow.
But the car itself, then they put a new door on it and sold the Suburban. And a few years ago, the family that owned it, they didn't know either. They didn't know the history until the LAPD called them and said, hey, we may need that car back again, like to borrow it.
Yeah.
And they said there's a tear in the front passenger seatbelt. And they always wondered about it. And now they think that's the one part that didn't get repaired.
Oh, wow.
That a bullet hit the seatbelt and ripped and kind of put a tear in it.
Yeah, wow.
But they also tried to sell it for a bunch of money, and I don't think they did. Because again, it just looks like a 90s Suburban.
Yeah, it's just a green Suburban.
I think it's a 96 GMC Suburban. Like, who cares, you know?